I'll talk to folks. They think I can advocate for myself, but then you get to talking to them like, well, it sounds like the boss really is not listening to you. And the way that you get the boss to listen to you is with a legally protected right to negotiate with them.
Katie Barrows is the communication director for the Department for Professional Employees, AFL-CIO. Katie, welcome to the program.
Hi, yeah, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be on to talk more about unions of professionals.
We're very excited about that, as both of us are at this point, quote unquote professional union employees, right? We both have white collar jobs. Adam also has a blue collar job where he's a member of the Stagehands Union, but his nonprofit that he works for, Alabama Arise, recently unionized with CWA Local 3908. So we're very excited about that. And so I guess we can start with and then I'm a federal employee. I got, one of them clickety-clack jobs in the office as well. So, let's just start with the premise of the thing, right? Professional employees. People always tell me I don't need a union because I have a clickety-clack job, and that means that everything's great and I have a perfect job and I have no need of a union because everything's great. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that all working people, including professionals, need a union. That's correct. That most folks think when they think of unions, they don't think of professionals. They think of factory workers or grocery store employees or folks on the assembly line. But professionals have a lot of the same concerns as other working people. They want to be fairly compensated. They want a voice in their workplace. And so most folks are surprised when they hear that professionals make up about 45% of the labor movement. There's around 6.4 million professionals in unions, and this includes engineers at Boeing, attorneys at the ACLU, architects at firms in New York, inspectors at the FAA, reporters at digital media outlets, and many others. So it's, unions are available for professionals. Like, professionals are eligible under the National Labor Relations Act and other state legislation for public sector employees to join and form unions. And more and more professionals are taking advantage of that as they, see their compensation not keeping up with their expenses and the return on their labor that they give their companies. And so this is something we're trying to spread the word about at DPE. And for those who are unfamiliar with DPE, we're a trade organization of the AFL-CIO. We're the Department for Professional Employees. And we work with around 24 national unions that represent nearly 4 million professionals across the workforce. And so this means we work with folks in healthcare, education, engineering, legal services, the performing arts, and many other fields. And, we support our affiliated unions with research, legislative advocacy, organizing support, communications, you name it. And DPE helps unions support their professional union members and organize more professionals.
And so what are some of the issues that professional employees might face in the workplace that they would benefit from unionization?
I mean, the biggest one is pay. Like, I think almost all workers, pay is like the number one reason or number one thing they would like to see improved in the workplace. DPE, we do a regular survey of non-union professionals, and our last one was in 2022, and we did one in 2017. And for both years, pay was the most important workplace issue, the thing that they want to see improved with the union. And we know that unions are effective at increasing pay. Union members make about 19% more than non-union employees. And then specifically in contracts, we've seen huge increases in pay recently, from adjunct faculty to nonprofit employees to digital journalists, For example, adjunct faculty at the New Jersey Institute of Technology secured a 32% increase in minimum pay in the first year of their most recent contract.
Wow.
And then, a 44% increase over the 4-year lifetime of the contract. We saw folks at the Onion just ratified a new contract that raised their pay by 3% in each year of the contract, but also a $10,000 increase in minimum starting salaries. And I've worked personally with nonprofits. That's one a campaign DPE ran, and in the first year of mini contracts, they've seen $10,000 increases to minimum pay. And then, subsequent guaranteed raises for the lifetime of the contract. So that's something that, like, pay is the most important thing that we've, heard from professionals on. And it's something that unions, have a track record of improving. The other benefits are another thing that are concern the professionals, parental leave, health insurance, and retirement contributions. And we've seen that, union members tend to have better health insurance plans with more employer contributions and retirement plans. Some interesting things we've seen professionals negotiate for are student loan repayment stipends. Nonprofit employees at every Texan secured that a monthly stipend of up to $200 per month towards student loan repayment for folks in their bargaining unit. As I mentioned, parental leave is really important. Folks are negotiating for like 12 to 16 weeks of paid parental leave, so they can stay home with a new child, and then also have the ability to take care of family members. And then we've also seen outsourcing in a number of sectors has been a big issue for professionals, especially when you can outsource, IT jobs to other countries and, get it cheaper. But folks at Google Contract Workers who organized in Pittsburgh at HCL America, they actually negotiated to keep a certain number of jobs in the United States. So that was part of the union contract. And then professionals have been kind of at the forefront of negotiating for DEI provisions in their union contracts. So they've tried to increase diversity at their organizations through negotiating for a percentage or how many candidates that have to be interviewed and make it to certain points in the hiring process, and that they have to be from underrepresented groups in that field. A number of them have negotiated in their contracts to have diversity committees, and also to have money that goes along with those diversity committees, so they actually are effective. And then things like pay equity reviews and adjustments. So looking at the salaries of everybody in the bargaining unit and seeing if there's disparities within job classifications or job titles with regard to people of different races and ethnicities and gender, and then making sure that there are salary adjustments to address those disparities. And we also know that, unions do improve the working conditions and the pay for professionals of color. For example, Black workers and Latino workers earn 26.7% more, and Latino workers earn 35% more as union members compared to their non-union counterparts. So these are all kind of pay, benefits, working conditions, and DEI initiatives. These are all things that are really of concern to professionals, and then this is something they've been able to address for their unions.
And it really is, that simple. Just the fact that, workers, whether you work at a computer, and your labor is done primarily, with your brain or whatever, or you work in a factory and your labor is more manual and physical, obviously the problems are unique in that, obviously, right? It's not the same thing to be in a factory as it is to work in an office, but the problems are the same in that, you both typically are going to want to be paid more. You both typically are going to want to make sure that you have, protections around work-life balance and healthcare and time, and being able to retire with dignity. And they are both similar in the fact that you want more control over your life, over the place where you spend the majority of your waking life, right? That statement is going to be true if you're a full-time working adult in the United States of America. No matter where you work, you spend the majority of your waking life at work. And so, you should have some amount of say, some amount of control, a voice in what that company does and what it does to you. And the only way that you're able to get that is through unionization, right? If you're not unionized, if you don't have a union contract, you don't have a process for collective bargaining, all of these things can be given or taken away completely at a whim. I mean, Adam, the reason that y'all unionized actually was primarily, of course, there are some things that you want to make better, but it was a big part of it was that, you feel like your jobs are pretty good and you want to make sure that things stay that way no matter what happens to management down the line.
That's exactly right. And maybe you can talk a little bit about that as well, Katie, because, this was our union campaign was not one where people were like upset and angry, fired up, right? It wasn't that kind of situation. And people think a lot of times, just like people have these misconceptions about, are unions appropriate for white collar office work? People also, assume that, a union drive is only going to happen when people are hitting rock bottom, when people are really upset and mad at the workplace. But in fact, sometimes that's the best time to unionize, when you do have a good management, you do have things that are going well, because you have a solid foundation, right? And you know what you want to start with, which is what you have, and build from there. And you want to protect that and lock it in. Because, and we've made this point before, management can change. People retire, people get sick, people change personally due to experiences that they have. Companies get bought out. I have a good friend who worked in a professional type situation, office structure, was a pretty good situation until the company got bought. And all of a sudden, people were being laid off, people's job titles were being changed, people were getting new titles with more responsibilities for less pay, right? All these sorts of restructuring issues that can happen in a professional workplace. And so, yeah, I didn't have a question there, but I did want to definitely reiterate that point, Jacob, that, a union is good for you as a worker. Even if you're happy where you're at, even if things are going well, even if you like your boss, in fact, maybe that's the best time to unionize, because hopefully you'll see that your boss will continue to be nice and will work in good faith with you, right? Of course, we know from just looking around at union drives across the country that it's easy to talk a good talk, but once the workers themselves start organizing, sometimes these progressive mission statements and very lovely bosses take a turn, right? And the power dynamics start to be revealed a little bit, more. And so, I appreciate you bringing that up, Jacob.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Well, and I just want to chime in and reiterate what you said. We've seen a lot of, especially off the top of my head, I think of nonprofit employees that organize when things are fairly good. They're like, we like where we work, and we do feel like our management is fair, but leads of nonprofit organizations, they change a lot of times frequently, or somebody
Mm-hmm.
retires. And so it's good to have that locked, their benefits and working conditions and pay locked into a union contract. And, you never know when things are going to, if the economy's bad, finance is going to take a turn. It's good to have, just provisions that make sure that, you get a fair return on what you've given to an organization. So I definitely have seen folks, take steps to unionize, even though things are fairly good at the moment.
Right, right. And some of it is, like you alluded to, preparing for when things aren't so good, whether that's internally or externally, right? Because of a nonprofit, if you're relying on grants, what happens when some of the grants dry up, if they dry up? What happens if funders change? Those things can happen in the nonprofit sector. Of course, we know in private industry, business environments change, and, some business leaders are more effective than others, right? And so that can change wildly, and having protections in place, such as a reduction in force provision, right, in your contract, if, stuff hits the fan financially for the organization or the company, how will that shake out for employees? Who will be chosen first to be laid off? How will the layoffs be administered? What kind of severance package will be offered? How long will people have health care after the layoff? All of these are questions that, like, we as workers deserve to have answers to and deserve to have input into. And like y'all said, doing a union about it, that's how you get that input.
Yeah, I mean, and we've seen, like, unfortunately, in digital journalism, things used to be really good, but things have changed around media, and there's been a lot of layoffs and a bunch of change. But
just
fortunately,
recently,
a lot of them,
right?
yeah,
just the last few days, right?
Correct, yeah. But fortunately, a lot of them have organized unions, and so even though there's going to be layoffs and people, which is, people are going to lose their livelihood, at least a lot of them have bargained for good provisions around layoffs and severance packages that will give folks, at least some kind of cushion to land on their feet when they're looking for another job. So,
and presumably recall rights, right? I mean, that's something that I know of in manufacturing agreements. There's typically recall and or transfer rights if other jobs become available.
Yeah, I don't know the specifics on that, but I would think that a lot of them are modeled after other contracts and have some of that stuff. But I definitely know there's a lot of language around severance and around letting folks know as soon as possible when things are not doing well at an organization. So
right. So what are I have actually, in some instances, reached out to a union about a professional campaign in the area with the tip. People interested in, and something close to a nascent organizing committee, and been told that they don't have capacity right now. Is there any union in particular that is really on the move, and they have capacity, and they're wanting to take new campaigns that you're aware of in your department?
I mean, I think there are a number of unions. I would say that it really depends on, like, the location, the type of professional employee, and the size, all of that of the unit. I think all of those are factors, and that that will determine whether the union and the structure of the union. Like, if it's mostly local driven union, that really will depend on the local, and so that's definitely more localized, right? And so if folks reach out to us, we're at our organized email is organize@dpeaflcio.org. And if they reach out to us, we will help. We will do the legwork of finding the best affiliated union with us that can, help with their organizing campaign. So we're here to find the best fit and a union that will have capacity and will be able to guide them through the union organizing process. So that's something we've done. We get leads, very frequently, and we're able to, match folks with affiliated unions and help them, exercise their workplace rights.
I think that is huge, and I'm really glad that you brought that up because that's something that I want to pass along to other workers, and I'm sure people listening, have taken note of that. That's really, really helpful because it can be intimidating, I think, sometimes for workers who are trying to organize. Right, it's kind of a scary thing, especially in a place like Alabama. It can seem quite scary. It doesn't have to be, but it can often seem that way. And then you're trying to find like, okay, well, which union makes sense? Which one, is interested in working with us? Which one has capacity? And who do I talk to? Which title? Which person? So, I think it's a real resource what you're putting out there to provide some of that and help kind of connect people with the right folks. And on that note, I wanted to really lift up the resources that y'all have available are fantastic. Just fantastic resources online, and lots of support that you can request is my understanding. But like, for example, there's a racial justice toolkit that talks all about some of the ways racial inequities, exist in our professional workplaces and how you can actually address that in the collective bargaining process. And I think, resources like that are just very, very helpful. And so, yeah, I want to encourage folks, especially those of you who would fall in this professional category, take some time, check out the Department for Professional Employees website. It is worth taking some time, dpeaflcio.org. Definitely take some time to do that and just poke around because you're going to find some stuff really relevant and hopefully very helpful.
And I would just chime in that something that I always have to remind myself of, and this is what we found in our most recent survey, the 2022 survey, and also in 2017, that most professionals do not know very much about unions. And so we want to make it as accessible to them as possible. So if they, find us, we want to help them as much as possible to learn more about the organizing process and to connect them with a union. But our big thing is trying to get the word out that professionals can form unions, and there's a lot of things that they can improve with a union, and other professionals have done this, and we have tons of examples of what they've managed to accomplish, and that's something that folks can use in first contracts. But we just want to educate folks and make sure that they know they can form a union, where to start. And really for us, we tell them the start is to email us at organize@dpeaflcio.org. And then we also, just really want to support our affiliates as they represent and organize more professional members.
How big of a problem do you find it in these campaigns, or as you're having these conversations, or as you're helping workers have these conversations? How big of a problem do you find that the internalized ideas of professional employees is to a union campaign in a professional workplace? I know that obviously there's a big push from above, from the bosses and the employers, organizations and agencies to try to make professional employees feel that we're really special snowflakes and we don't need unions. We're just a totally different kind of worker, and we're too good for that, right? But I find that there are professional employees themselves who have that construction in their head of themselves, that they're so smart and special that they don't need a union, right? That they're, they can handle things individually for themselves, and as opposed to maybe there's that idea is maybe less entrenched in some other environments than in a white collar professional job. How big of an issue do you find that is? I
think it is a barrier. Like, I'll talk to folks and they think they, in most cases a college degree. Like I
Right.
can advocate for myself.
Right.
But then you get to talking to them about their workplace, and they start complaining about, their pay, or that, a lot of times I hear in healthcare about staffing, and this ranges from nurses to doctors. Like there are doctors who have organized unions with the with AFT and the American Federation of Teachers Healthcare Division, and yeah, you start talking to them like, well, it sounds like even though you feel that you have more leverage, the boss really is not listening to you. And so the way that you get the boss to listen to you is with a legally protected right to negotiate with them. And you start, so once you start to have deeper conversations, folks tend to be like, oh, yeah, like maybe I do need a union. And then the other thing I do is I point to, some really educated and smart folks who have been unionized for a long time. And that includes the aerospace engineers at Boeing, like literal, like, rocket scientists in a sense. And they've been organized, I think since like around the 40s or 50s, for a long time. And then, the rocket science at NASA are organized. Again, doctors are organized, and you start giving them examples of who else are union members, and you're kind of like, well, they see the value in a union, and they're highly educated folks, and they've had benefits, and then folks start to become more open to the idea. I've recently done kind of an interview series with folks who have formed unions in the last couple years. I've talked to some folks at an animation studio in New York, nurses in Vermont, librarians in Pittsburgh, and they've recently organized. So they've had to have conversations in the past couple of years, and they've kind of said once we get down and talking to folks about the issues, they come around and they do see the value. And then they've also said that one of the biggest benefits of having a union is kind of the collective, like the relationships that are built.
Right.
Like a lot of folks will talk about how before folks didn't really talk to each other, or people didn't know each other, and now they become close, and they are able to have regular conversations, which really creates more camaraderie in the workplace, and it's better for everyone.
Right. Yeah, no, that actually friend of the show is the president of the rocket scientists at NASA down the road here in Huntsville. So we're very very big fans of our rocket scientists union here in Huntsville. So
yeah, and I really want to lift up that point you just made about the relationships. That is so true. I mean, that is something that I experienced in this recent organizing campaign at the nonprofit. It really brought us together in a deeper way, and particularly those of us involved in the organizing drive, really got. I mean, because it was a lot of work, right? A lot of work in terms of tracking one-on-one conversations and debriefing with each other and strategizing, and through that really coming to lean on each other and really work as a team. It does build a level of camaraderie and a level of solidarity that is often missing in a lot of workplaces, but especially in professional workplaces often, because like y'all were talking about, we're talking often highly educated people, people whose jobs are often very individualized, right? Someone may sit down in front of their computer and be responsible to answer their own emails and write their own reports and things of that nature all day, and not necessarily in the team atmosphere. But collective organization is definitely the way forward for any working person. And yeah, I really appreciate the work that you're doing to lift that out. And librarians, I hope will definitely pay attention. There's so many threats to libraries right now. Particularly in states like Alabama, where, we have book banners and we have people threatening to send librarians to jail. And I just want to pass on to any librarians listening. you need to organize, and organizing is the best way possible to protect yourself and your coworkers. And, of course, the community will be behind you, but organizing in the workplace is going to be part of that solution. And check out DPE for more resources on how to do that, which I love that, and I'll definitely be sharing that with folks.
There you go. The president of the Rocket Scientists Union actually said, dropped in the chat that the locals at NASA have been around since the post-Apollo reduction in force in the early 70s. So at least here in Huntsville. So there you go. There's the bit of trivia for today. Katie Barrows, is there anything else that you wanted to make sure you leave folks with before we let you go?
Well, I would just say, I mean, I'm sure you harp on this, being in Alabama, that folks often think that if they're in a right to work state, that they can't organize a union. And that's another thing that I commonly have conversations with folks. I'm like, no, you can still have a union. There's just, it comes down to, who pays during the contract and all of that jazz. But I think there is a misconception by many folks like, well, I'm in a right to work state, I can't organize. So you have the barrier to, professionals' knowledge about unions, and then you have the overall knowledge around right to work. But I would say, if you are a working person, professional or not, like, you generally have rights in the workplace, and you should think about exercising them. And especially with all that we've been through with the pandemic, inflation. But for professionals specifically, if you're interested in learning more, you should contact us at organize@dpeaflcio.org.
All right, Katie Barrows, Communication Director for the Department for Professional Employees, AFL-CIO. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, appreciate you. Really enjoyed it. Yeah, and just wanted to point out, y'all, definitely do check that resource out. And something she said that I wanted to mention before we even transition to our next segment, which was folks who think it's illegal to organize in Alabama. We do run into that all the time.
Yeah.
I also run into it at the public sector. I had someone just this week tell me it's illegal for me to organize, right? They didn't. And it's not a knock on them at all, because that is a common conception that, people at colleges and universities and other public sector institutions like local governments, that they can't organize. Public libraries being another example, which in some cases are, private sector, nonprofit entities, and in some cases are public sector, local government entities. It gets really complicated and messy there. But there again, that's why I'm glad we had DPE on today to share that resource and let folks know that there are people you can reach out to for assistance. You don't have to, do everything from scratch and reinvent the wheel. There are other people who have organized. No matter what job you have, chances are someone has organized in that job somewhere, right?
Absolutely. Somewhere
in this country. And so, we just got to learn from each other, continue to share and lift each other up with this kind of stuff, and find leads where we can find them. Because we have to grow the labor movement in every industry, in every kind of workplace. We have to grow. If we're not growing, we're dying, and we have been dying for 50 years. It seems like maybe we're, coming back from the death, thankfully, over the last couple of years. But we've got to grow in the white-collar sector, in the professional sector. So, y'all hit them up.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.